Hello and welcome to the big picture. The Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif has once again set the cat among the pigeons, so to say, by calling for the intervention of the United States to find a solution to the Kashmir issue. The reactions to this suggestion made on his way to US to hold talks with the American president has been on expected lines. Both India and US have rejected it outright, saying that it's a bilateral issue. Ever since the Shimla Agreement of 1972, India has maintained that any resolution of the vexed Kashmir issue has to be arrived at bilaterally, and the US in the last several years has also maintained it. However, Sharif argues that situation has changed now with both countries having nuclear weapons. He therefore thinks that an outsider is necessary to intervene to find a solution, considering the dangers of two nuclear neighbors constantly being at each other's throat. We will discuss why Pakistan wants a third-party intervention and whether there is any merit to the demand, and also why America should keep out of the issue. To discuss this, I have with me Vivek Katju, former ambassador, Ashok Behuria, fellow at the Institute of Defence Studies and Analysis, who is also an expert on Pakistan, Vinod Sharma, political editor of the Hindustan Times. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Katju, this is a well-known stand of everybody that, after Shimla Agreement, but why does Pakistan keep repeating this more often? And is there any merit in Nawaz Sharif's argument now that the two are nuclear nations, so the concerns, the dangers are more, so we need somebody like US to intervene and find a solution to it?
Your first question, why does Pakistan raise it? If you look at it purely in terms of real politics, Pakistan realizes full well that despite everything it has attempted to change the status quo in Jammu and Kashmir, it has failed. And therefore, like it had been advocating from the early years of our independence, so now they are looking to third parties. Now, while doing so, I think the Pakistanis realize full well that India will never agree to this, because that has been our stand not only from Simla, it predates Simla.
Right.
It was also in Tashkent, if I recollect correctly, that the Pakistanis wanted third party, etc. to come in, but the Tashkent declaration steered clear of it. Now, why are they doing it now? I think they are trying to get some brownie points from the Americans, trying to exercise some leverage in the context of Afghanistan. Because if you recollect, they were making this point. They've been making this point for a number of years now.
No. How do they get any brownie points? How is it linked to Afghanistan?
No, it is not. But the Pakistanis say that look, if you want us to settle Afghanistan, if you want us to pay full attention to our western borders, etc., you've got to help us. They tell the Americans that you've got to help us vis-a-vis India. And when it comes to vis-a-vis India, naturally for them it's Jammu and Kashmir. The fact is that Jammu and Kashmir is a symptom of a problem. It is not the problem. The problem lies in the mental makeup of the Pakistanis, in the undying hostility towards us.
Okay. Ashok, do you agree with what Katju says? And one more thing, why Americans, why not somebody else?
That is interesting. But I would say that much of what Mr. Katju said is correct. Like in US also, a lot of people have started saying that Afghanistan situation is so difficult because India and Pakistan are not ready to bury their hatchet.
Right.
So maybe he's appealing to that. But if you look at Nawaz Sharif's election campaign, right. He had said that we will solve it between ourselves.
Right.
And now he is taking it to US.
Right.
Because they know that only US has that leverage with both the countries, and perhaps it could do something. But more than that, I would try to look at it from the domestic point of view.
Exactly.
If you look at it from the domestic point of view, he has been characterized as a Hamlet now. Like he is somebody who is ambivalent about everything.
Right.
Economy is not picking up. Even if they have got money from IMF and US, they still do not know how to move on. And if you look at the internal security situation also, he and Kayani and the army establishment, perhaps they do not look eye to eye. And if you look at relationship with India also, the way the there is an upskill in violence along LOC, that convinces us to think that perhaps Nawaz Sharif doesn't have that much of control over the army as well. So in all these three, he perhaps wants to steal the thunder from the army, by saying that I would like to bring in US here, and I would like to raise this Kashmir issue in a typically new way.
So you're saying that he's essentially trying to sell it to the domestic audience.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would look at it from that perspective.
Vinod, Vivek Katju says he's trying to score some brownie points, and and another very interesting thing is that we are told that there is a fair deal of hostility within Pakistan against Americans. Now, how does this square up that he's asking for American intervention?
Look, the Pakistan Prime Minister's statement, first of all, let me put it in a perspective. It flies in the face of his objection, his exception that he took to India raising the terror question with the Americans in the Prime Minister's meeting with Obama.
Yes, that statement which is supposed to have made, which later the Dehati Aurat thing.
No. That the India was the epicenter.
Right.
And he raised objection to that there is something, why should India take the issue
Exactly.
to them? They should talk to us. No,
Yes.
this flies in the face of that.
Exactly.
But when he made that statement, he perhaps forgot that the war against terror is a global war in which any two countries that are affected by that war, by that threat, can discuss with each other. While Kashmir is not sure, because since 1972, India has not formally, you see, there's a distinction between what happened at Tashkent and what happened at Shimla. In Shimla, both sides negotiated an agreement and
Right.
signed on it.
Right.
And it was ratified by the Parliament of Pakistan. And that is why the legitimacy of that
Right.
agreement. Now, that agreement makes it clear that the essence of it is bilateralism. And India has taken that position along the years that it supersedes the UN resolutions. And on that basis, we have also refused to deal with UNMOGIP, United Nations Military Observers Group on India and Pakistan, which was sought to be involved by Pakistan to probe the violations along the LOC recently. Now, this is the perspective. Now, why has Nawaz Sharif, who till the other day was promising to pick up the threads from where they left it in 1992, and Vivek knows it so well that it was a bilateral pact between Nawaz Sharif and Atal Bihari Vajpayee, that why is it that he has just changed? My personal reading of the situation is that Mr. Nawaz Sharif has for the time being put the big tickets initiatives with India off the radar. He is currently trying to set up, with not much success still, a negotiating table with the Taliban. And India has predicated taking forward the dialogue on concrete action against terror and notably the perpetrators of 26/11. Now, for that he'll have to open a front in his own Punjab, and there is not much distance between Muridke and Raiwind, and that could be a serious problem for him. So his first priority is to set the economy right, and a precondition of that is to rein in or to persuade the Taliban to agree to certain civilized conduct or behavior. I don't know whether it will happen or not, but he is now focusing on that front because he knows that India too is pole bound and is not going to take any major initiative with Pakistan until there is some delivery on the terror front, so that the party in power or the government in power can at least justify it before the people. Otherwise, and thirdly, and that's a very important point, that today with the statement of Nawaz Sharif, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's decision to meet Nawaz Sharif on the sidelines of UNJ stands vindicated. Had that meeting not happened, in retrospect, the argument of Mr. Nawaz Sharif for US intervention in Kashmir would have gained strength, because he would have shown that bilateral track is not happening. So I think that in this country, whenever a debate happens on foreign policy, some leeway, some elbow room must be given to the government in power, regardless of the nature of that government.
Mr. Katju.
No, we've got to place this in a little in a context which is slightly different. What some of us have noticed over the past many months is that the Pakistanis have been pointing to a clause in the similar agreement which says that bilateralism or
any other peaceful
means
mutually
agreed upon by the
right.
two sides. Now, in this context, they have been saying the third party is not ruled out.
Exactly.
In some track too,
anybody reading could also make the same.
Say, yes, but it is preconditioned on both sides agreeing.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
not only the Pakistanis,
so
but
they
the
keep
world,
trying. So they keep trying,
the
hoping
world
that we will
knows
agree.
that we will never agree.
Yeah.
And that is why the Americans and the others who were earlier do-gooders have now made it very plain that we will not intervene unless both sides ask. And they know full well that India will not ask.
Right.
So this is part of a pattern. Now, Nawaz Sharif meeting him, not meeting him,
No,
as far as I'm concerned, it is a meaningless exercise. You can meet him or you need not meet him. I mean, how does it matter?
Are you trying to say what Vinod feels that now the meeting which took place last month on the sidelines of UN General Assembly has been vindicated now?
Vinod's logic is personal to him. I do not see how in the larger scheme of things bilateralism has been vindicated by that meeting. It has not been vindicated by that meeting when one of the participants immediately after the meeting wants third party. So it's stretching logic a little far. But then people can have their views. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter.
I think that Ambassador Katju thinks that we can keep on harping on bilateralism, that element in the 72 Pact on bilateralism. And I remember J.N. Dixit, who was as much a guru to him as to me, in 1992, January, he said that we are going to discuss Kashmir under Shimla, and it's provided for under Shimla. And if he thinks, if Ambassador Katju thinks, and due regards to him, that India and Pakistan don't talk to each other, and India keeps on harping on bilateralism,
I think
that will make a lot of sense.
Vinod, I have on the phone line from Islamabad, Hamid Mir, editor of the Geo TV. Hamid, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, Hamid, I have here on the panel Vivek Katju, Vinod Sharma and Ashok Behuria, just for your information. This statement of your Prime Minister while on his way to US saying that US should intervene and to find a solution to Kashmir. Isn't it very ironical that we keep hearing about the kind of hostility which is there towards Americans in your own country, and then Nawaz Sharif wants America to intervene?
First of all, good evening to all of your guests.
Yes.
And secondly, I discussed this issue with Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif a few days back, and I told him that the Pakistan should not involve the third country in our bilateral relations with India. But the Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif said that during his recent visit of United States, when he was in New York, and the Prime Minister of India, Manmohan Singh, met President Obama in Washington, he said that it was actually Mr. Manmohan Singh who discussed India-Pakistan relations with the U.S. President, and he made complaints against Pakistan to the U.S. President.
Right.
And secondly, there are some people in Pakistan who say that they are of the view that Pakistan should not involve any third country in its relations with India. But when the United States put pressure on India, India said goodbye to Pakistan, Iran, India gas pipeline. So I think that both Indian and the Pakistani governments, they should not involve United States or any other third country, and they should not listen to any third country, because it's very sad that initially Manishankar Iyer came to Pakistan and he said that Pakistan and India and Iran, we will have a pipeline from Iran to India via Pakistan. When the U.S. government put pressure on India, so the India just said goodbye to this project.
Right.
So I think that both Pakistan and India, they should not listen to United States or any third country
But-
in their internal affairs.
But Hamid Mir, why do you think, what motivates Nawaz Sharif to make this kind of a statement when the Shimla agreement, Indians always talk of Shimla agreement and we say that, it's been there, that it has to be discussed, it has to be, any resolution has to be done bilaterally. But why, what
Maybe
is the motivation?
Because of
What-
the attitude of the Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, because it was Prime Minister Manmohan Singh who first mentioned Pakistan in front of President Obama. So maybe Nawaz Sharif thought that the United States is very important for Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, so he should involve United States in the Kashmir issue.
That's
but
interesting.
I personally think that Pakistan should not involve any third country.
Okay, I think Vivek Katju wants to respond. Please stay on, Hamid, I'll come back to you. Yes, yes,
All
Mr.
that the
Katju.
Prime Minister said there, and while speaking to the press when he was meeting President Obama, was that Pakistan is the epicenter of terrorism. The Prime Minister was not involving or seeking to involve the United States in anything which is bilateral between India and Pakistan. So to say that just because the Prime Minister made this statement to not only to from that venue to the world and to the United States doesn't mean an invitation for bilateralism, which the
Hamid
Prime
Mir-
Minister Nawaz Sharif has directly sought.
Hamid Mir, so you think your Prime Minister is playing to a domestic audience? Is there any pressure domestically for him to make these kind of statements and try to bring in the Americans? Because your country seems to have a lot of problems with the Americans.
There is no pressure on Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif to involve Americans in India-Pakistan relations, but certainly there is pressure on Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif to do something for the resolution of the Kashmir issue. And he made promises during his election campaign that he will try his level best to resolve the Kashmir issue.
Exactly.
So if the India and Pakistan, both the countries, are not implementing the UN resolutions on Kashmir, then what should the Prime Minister of Pakistan do? You tell me.
UN
resolutions are outdated.
UN
They don't
resolution.
apply.
Vinod?
Hamid,
UN resolution is not outdated. I
Totally
recently
outdated,
interviewed the
Mr.
UN
Hamid.
Secretary General, Mr. Baki,
After Simla, it
and
doesn't
he said that
apply.
the UN resolution is still
Simla buried the
valid.
UN resolutions.
Hamid, Shimla buried the UN resolution. This is the stand of India,
So
and it
this
has
is-
been
this
the
is
stand
your
for the
point
last
of view.
40
This is
years.
your point of view. Okay. Then why India and Pakistan they are not able to resolve the Kashmir issue
Because
under
of your
similar
terrorism,
agreement?
Mr. Hamid Mir.
1 second. Yes, Vinod.
Hamid, you see, the question here is that the Simla Pact of 72 was ratified by your parliament. It has yet not been
Okay.
unratified by your parliament. And the essence of Shimla is bilateralism. And India and Pakistan have been talking Simla, talking Kashmir under the Simla Pact for many years now. Yes, of course, there hasn't been precious little forward movement on that issue. But it's a question of territory. Neither your leadership, neither our leadership has the mandate or the support within their respective countries to negotiate territory or alter territory. And that is why during Musharraf's time, the paradigm shifted from new borders to no borders. That is making the LOC irrelevant. And that is where the terror question comes in. A. B. The war against terror is a global war, Hamid. It's not a bilateral issue. So if the Prime Minister of India raises that question with Obama, whose country is leading that global war, sometimes rightly, sometimes wrongly, many a times in your country, there is a lot of collateral damage, so they're under a lot of attack in your country. But it's nevertheless a global war, and it's not a bilateral issue. So I think the comparison is a bit odious.
Kashmir is not an international issue?
No, Kashmir is not it's international in the sense it's between two countries.
It is a bilateral
This
issue.
is your point of view. I cannot agree with
No,
your
no,
point
but
of view.
Hamid Mir, you're still not. We are still not clear why Nawaz Sharif is raising this issue outside after having said
No, I'm
to
very
you.
much clear because I have
After having
a
said
very
to you
detailed
and another
discussion with
Indian
Nawaz Sharif,
journalist
I'm
that
very much
why.
clear.
1 second.
I am very much clear.
Yes.
I know that I asked this question again and again to Nawaz Sharif because he is aware of my position on this issue because I have written a lot, I have said a lot, and We know that I have always opposed the involvement of United States in India-Pakistan relations. So the Nawaz Sharif was of the view that it is actually Prime Minister Manmohan Singh who is trying to create problems for Pakistan in front of White House or in Washington. So if Manmohan Singh thinks that India-Pakistan relations will be resolved through the Washington, so I will raise this issue in Washington.
No, Mr.
So the credit goes to Prime Minister Manmohan Singh.
No, Mr. Hamid Mir, the fact of the matter is that after the meeting which the Prime Minister Manmohan Singh had with Obama, he met your Prime Minister later, and there seemed to have been whatever doubts or shadows were there were apparently cleared in that meeting. And now for Mr. Nawaz Sharif to come out with this kind of a statement and then try to put a entire shadow on this on the meeting between him and the Prime Minister in the UN on the sidelines of UN, don't you think he is unnecessarily trying to complicate the issue?
I think that the Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and Nawaz Sharif, they should meet again, and they should discuss this issue with each other again, and then again, and then again. And I am very much confident that if they will talk to each other again and again, the misunderstandings will be removed.
Okay, Vinod?
Hamid, one last thing, when Chaudhry Shujat, during Musharraf's time, came to India, he's made his first visit to India, that's a party which identifies itself with the security establishment and also claims to be the torchbearer of the Pakistan movement. But you see, during that period, when some leaders from Hurriyat conference went to Pakistan and they raised the UN resolution question, he told them that, look, forget about that, we have moved way ahead of that, And that was the era where out-of-the-box thinking was being done, and Musharraf had made certain proposals, and there was this general air of expectancy that those proposals were also backed by the army establishment. Now, it seems that Mr. Nawaz Sharif, out of his lack of respect for Musharraf or lack of trust in Musharraf regime, has broken totally free of that, despite having promised just a couple of weeks back that he would pick up the thread from where they left in 1999 with Vajpayee.
You see, the ground reality, the political ground reality in Pakistan is entirely different, but you are talking to me. All the political parties, whether they are regional parties or they are national parties, these parties have their political manifestos. They have the election manifestos. They contested the recent election in May 2013 on the same election manifestos. All these parties, they have mentioned in their manifestos very clearly that the issue of Kashmir should be resolved under the light of the UN resolutions of 1948 and 49. So whatever Musharraf promised with India, that was just a promise of a military dictator who had no mandate. So that's it. And whatever Nawaz Sharif said in the UN General Assembly, he mentioned the UN resolution in his speech, and that is the official position of the government of Pakistan.
Okay. Behuria? They seem to be going back now completely. He's talking about the speech of Nawaz Sharif in the UN General Assembly.
That is exactly what I wanted
to ask.
what
he's saying.
That is what I wanted to ask Mr. Mee, that every time India wants to resolve it bilaterally, there are spoilers at work in Pakistan who do not want this path to proceed. Even during Zardari's time, when Zardari was trying to make some effort to get back to the track, you had Mumbai. And after that, the moment there was a feeling that Nawaz Sharif is coming back to power, and Nawaz Sharif also emphasized on getting back to bilateral dialogue, you have all these upscaling of violence along the LOC. So there are always spoilers at work who do not want this bilateral track to proceed any further.
Yes, Mr. Katju.
You see, what does this teach us? To me, the lesson is unmistakable, that more than political personalities in Pakistan, it is the army establishment, one.
Absolutely.
And two, it is the underpinnings and the verities of the Pakistan state and its basic approaches to India. So those who think that Pakistani personalities, political personalities will suddenly pull a rabbit out of a hat are unfortunately mistaken. On Musharraf's plan, everyone has repudiated it.
No,
Everyone that I have talked to has
Katju,
repudiated.
so what are you trying to say? You're trying to say that these talks should not be held.
No,
or,
no, who
what
is
it?
saying that? I said this. I said, to me, you can hold talks. Whether you hold talks or you don't hold talks is not of any great relevance.
You are saying that things won't change.
Have things changed in 60 years?
Mr. Hamid Mir, this is the view. This is the view of section of people in India also. But is there that kind of an optimism? Is there any kind of an optimism in Pakistan which can overcome this kind of view?
You see, I am one of those people who think that India and Pakistan should not fight with each other. They should talk. And these days, it is becoming very difficult for me to say it publicly because of the tension on the line of control.
Yes.
So you have to keep this in your mind. Right now, you and me are talking to each other, but our forces, the security forces, they are firing bullets on each other on the border, not only in Sialkot border, but also on the LOC.
Yes.
So this situation is very tense, and maybe that is the reason that Nawaz Sharif is under so much pressure from within his own party to say these kind of things in America, because this area where last night lot of Pakistani civilians were injured by the Indian firing, this area is full of Nawaz Sharif supporters. The Nawaz Sharif won this whole area in the recent election.
But why Mr. Mir...
Today there was a big demonstration against India in the Sialkot area.
Hamid,
so Mr. Nawaz Sharif is under so much pressure
that
he wanted peace with India, but now India and Pakistan are fighting with each other.
Hamid Mir, is it
there is not a big fight, but these skirmishes are creating a lot of bad impact on our relations.
Hamid, Hamid, 1 minute. Hamid, 1 minute, 1 second. These skirmishes which you are talking about, is it a coincidence that every time there is something, I know there is some upward movement in the relations, these kind of skirmishes happen? Do you see that? Don't you see this as a coincidence?
You see, I think that we should investigate that whenever Nawaz Sharif made a foreign visit, whether he is going to China or he gone to Turkey or he gone to United States, something bad happens in Pakistan on the India-Pakistan border. So I don't believe in these conspiracy theories, but today there is an article in an Urdu newspaper which is pro-Nawaz Sharif paper, and they say that maybe it's India which is creating problems for Nawaz Sharif whenever Nawaz Sharif made a foreign visit. So the India started firing on the line of control or the international border. I don't believe in these conspiracy theories.
We have the same kind of theories are here also.
Should go back to the ceasefire on line of control and the international border, because this situation is becoming complicated day by day.
Okay. Vinod, last words very quickly.
No, I think first of all, I think that I beg to again disagree with the very pessimistic prognosis of my friend, Ambassador Katju, that what has happened for the past 60 years, it has not been resolved. Well, there have been complicated issues across the globe that have taken decades to resolve. For instance, the border dispute between Russia and China. How long did it take, Professor Katju, Dr. Katju?
No, but
the point is that you see, Hamid made a very important point.
Yes, quickly.
That people who are now supportive of a dialogue are under fire. Their number is decreasing.
Yes.
Because whenever there is tension,
and he himself feels.
Whenever there is tension, the first casualty is the peacenik.
Right.
But I would request Hamid to keep up the tempo. You see, finally, dialogue is the only alternative, is indispensable. No dialogue can only be tactics.
I agree with you, and I thank you for saying this.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Hamid Mir, we're completely run out of time. I think on that note, we need to end. It's heartening to hear from across the border Hamid Mir saying that he doesn't agree to a third-party intervention, and we hope there are more and more people on both sides who will see reason and hopefully some kind of a resolution, to work towards some kind of a resolution. Thanks to all my guests, Hamid Mir from Islamabad, Vivek Katju, Ashok Behuria and Vinod Sharma. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in Big Picture, same time tomorrow.